Yes.
So this last week, obviously the big news. I mean, we're on a different schedule right now, so it's a couple of days by, but there hasn't had an opportunity much to talk about it with the meeting that Kevin Durant had in London last week. Now, I was in London last week, and I've wondered like what would have been amazing if I like went into a Starbucks and saw like Josiah and Kevin Durant in the back with chai tea and
Lonnie
lattes.
Scott's Jazz Club.
Yeah, I'm sure it happened in a glorious hotel suite that cost $10,000 a night. But I was thinking how funny that would be. So what I'm not sure about Spears is I think the two most important things to me coming out of this are one, that Durant is not changing his stance on wanting to be traded.
Yeah.
Because there was some thought like, man, they haven't been able to find a deal for him. Kyrie seems to be a little bit more settled. Maybe he would be willing to come back and try it again. There was like this feeling like Durant like made it clear, like, no, that's not happening. I still want to be traded. Doesn't mean he will be traded, but I think that was an important thing because we didn't know where Kevin was after 6 weeks of this trade because he hadn't, at least in any meaningful way, expressed that. Two is a lot of people focused on the first part of the tweet that Joe Tsai sent, which was he was saying basically he's not firing Steve Nash and Sean Marks. I'm interested in the second half of what he said, which seemed like a basic sentence, but I don't think was basic, which is when he said, we're going to do what's best for the Brooklyn Nets. That seems like something you would say in passing. But what I think he's saying there is we're not making a trade to satisfy Kevin. We're making a trade to satisfy us. And so they both kind of doubled down on their position. Kevin doubled down, they wanted to be traded. And the Nets doubled down that they're not going to be pressured into a trade because Kevin is trying to make it uncomfortable. That's /hoop right now. Shopify.com/hoop. You've seen a lot of things in the NBA. There have been coaches who have been, star players are trying to get coaches. The NBA is 75 years old. There's probably been star players trying to get players coaches, for like 74 and a half of those 75 years. Yeah. And there will be for another 75 years. It's the nature of the NBA. I'm not really reactive to that. I just don't know exactly. Like, I think it was presented that Durant made those requests at this meeting, but I'm not 100% sure that's true.
Yeah.
So I really am setting that aside. I'm sort of ignoring that, Spears. I don't know how you saw it.
Yeah, I've kind of heard the frustration with Sean Marks. Wouldn't be the first time that a star and a general manager didn't see eye to eye, right?
Right.
The Nash thing was kind of a new thing because if I'm not mistaken, Kevin and Kyrie wanted Nash, right? There wasn't even really a coaching search there. This is, I don't know that Nash gets hired without their blessing, correct?
True, and I think people are doing sort of like that. They're saying, well, what about this? What about you wanted him hired? And again, I'll say, well, yeah, but that's commonplace in the NBA. A player wants a coach, and then a player's done with the coach. Like that's not surprising to me. If he,
but I think that that was new to me. Maybe this Marks thing I've heard in the past, and I actually talked to Sean Marks this summer a little bit at Summer League, and he definitely didn't seem stressed. He definitely didn't seem in a hurry. He talked about an upcoming vacation to Hawaii.
Sounds great.
Yeah, like so. I think you're right on it. What you said earlier is, they're going to do what's best for them. And I always have this quote, man, that Pau Gasol told me once that just always rings in my head. He's like, it's great being a free agent, but then after you sign, everything goes out the window. You have no power anymore. And I think
your power is limited. I mean, I think he still has, Kevin could probably still dictate their travel schedule. Like, hey, we're going to
Yeah.
stay an extra night in LA. I think they'd let him do
Yeah.
that, but I don't think he is, especially after you've demanded a trade. I'm not sure you can
Yeah.
dictate the hiring and firing.
Yeah. And so, but also, I mean, you signed a deal, so you can't dictate that they're going to trade you either, right? And you just saw what happened with Ben Simmons and the ridicule that he received. I can't see Kevin sitting out.
But I don't know what his choice is at this point, Spears. I think that
Yeah.
again, so after the initial wave where the report from the Athletic came out and then Sai's tweet came out, at that point I'm starting to think about training camp, because by going this route, Kevin's options are a little bit limited. If he, he's asked to be traded, he's been told, no, or at least not now. He's asked for the coach and general manager to be replaced, and they basically has been told no. So you just show up at camp and just accept the L and say, okay, well, I asked and they said no, and I'll just play here. I mean, that I agree with you that I find it hard to believe that Kevin would just sit on the sidelines fully healthy and miss games.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the Nets position that ultimately he would play. But
Yeah.
at this point, I mean, with this aggressive posture, I think it makes it hard for him to come to camp, because if he comes to camp, he's kind of raising the white flag.
Yeah.
There's been some reporting that I have not personally heard this, but there's been some reporting of this, and I disagree with it. In the off season, the Nets let go Adam Harrington, who was their one of their assistant coaches, who
that's his
happened
guy.
to be, and that's his guy that he works with on a daily basis. On teams, every player has like an assistant he works with. Some of the assistants have 2 or 3 players.
Yeah.
There's the development assistant who works with the young guys. There's a big man who works with the big men. And star players, there's some star players that tend to have guys they like to work with. And so it's been reported that, they let this guy, Adam Harrington, go, and that Durant wasn't even told. He found out after the fact.
Yeah, that's not good.
And that he's actually been continuing to work out with him. Now, the question is that really enough to, cause you to demand a trade? But I think it's probably just one more, log on the fire. And look, let's just be honest. I don't think Steve Nash has exactly made anybody forget about Red Auerbach out there. and in that that playoff series against the Celtics, Ime Udoka had some impressive coaching maneuvers against him. But when you hire,
it's hard to it's hard to judge Nash based on all the turmoil. To me,
I agree. I would love to know. Now, I mean, let's just remember who Steve Nash was as a player.
Yeah.
Steve Nash was an ultimate competitor.
Yeah.
He was hard-nosed. He was relentless. I
played against him in college.
West Coast Conference.
Yeah.
West Coast Conference clash. He said many times that, putting you in the pick and roll was one of the most difficult things he ever did. But, he just, he through the back part of his career, he fought those back injuries and, laid on the court and, just did everything he possibly could to keep playing. And he's just the mentality of Kyrie Irving. It just is not who. I just can't believe that Steve Nash has worked with Kyrie Irving every day and thinks, boy, this is the way to conduct yourself. And Kevin, Steve Nash has done nothing but praise Kevin, and nothing, as far as I can see, nothing but set things up for him. So, I mean, this is a very respected. He may not be a great coach. He may never be a great coach. He may be a great coach down the line. He's not a great coach now. I think he'd admit that. But I would love for him to write a memoir about these years, Spears, so that we can know what Steve Nash is really feeling, because he looks like he's been like sedated during press conferences.
You know, he looks like, and Brian, you know this from past years, he looks like old Knicks coaches. You know what I mean? Like, I remember when how Isaiah was when he was coaching the Knicks, and like the Knicks could bring in the nicest guy in the world and turn him into a jerk, right? Or just turn him into despondent. And
it happened kind of with Mike Woodson.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he had that one really good year, and then they just kind of withered on the vine, and you know, he turned kind of surly.
Remember when Woodson was sitting in the stands at Summer League, and you know, God bless him, Jonathan Sopranowicz, who I need him to write a book about his time with the Knicks.
Yeah,
the PR guy. He sat in the stands at Summer League, not on the actual stairs, next to Woodson's seat, to make sure that nobody talked to Woodson.
Yeah.
That, I mean, and just the look on Woodson's face, that's Nash right now. It's just,
I mean, Mike Woodson has been involved in the NBA. I mean, now he's coaching at Indiana, but he was involved in the NBA for like 35 or 40 years. I mean,
yeah,
he can handle his business, but
he's a grown man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say the same thing about Steve Nash. He's a grown man.
Yeah.
I always think of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I can't remember what year exactly he asked for the trade from the Bucks. 70. Let me see when that was, but
73. Right.
Yeah, I think so you know, he had a meeting right before the start of the season. And it was with Wayne Embry, who was the general manager. And you know, Kareem was the driving force of the championship team, but Wayne Embry had built the team. He had gone out and gotten Oscar Robertson.
Yeah.
And you know, the year before they had gone to the finals.
1974, by the way.
And lost, I believe, in 7.
Yeah.
So he got traded in 75, but in 74 he comes to a meeting right before start of training camp, and he requests a trade. They have this, I remember reading about it. They have this dinner at this hotel in Milwaukee. I remember they ate beef Wellington, and it was like a real cordial dinner. And then it was in a hotel suite. And then afterwards, Kareem and his agent says he'd like to be traded, and he said he wanted to go to New York, LA, or Washington. And by the way, it stayed secret for like 9 months. It came out like right at the end of the season, which is a different time and era. But the point I'm trying to make is, this is 1974, so this is 48 years ago. Moments after Kareem makes a trade demand to the Bucks, Wayne Embry volunteers to quit. Basically, do you want me to be fired? This is a guy who is, the previous 2 years, the previous 3 years, they've won a title, been to the finals, been to the conference finals. He obviously had built the team. He said, do you want me to be fired?
Yeah.
And the reason that Wayne Embry said that was because he knew that if anybody in the world who had to choose between him and Kareem, they would choose Kareem and he would be gone. And so my point is that was going on 50 years ago. 50.
Yeah.
It's going to go on in 50 years from now.
Yeah.
And so the fact that Durant would want to have some say in who the general manager is, it's not shocking. We can debate whether or not it's smart business or whatever. It's not shocking, but the way he's gone about this has really limited his options. If he had asked for a change in the general manager a year ago before his extension, and he had good reasons, he's like, look, I didn't like the Harden trade, I didn't like this or whatever. I mean, he probably would have gotten it done. They probably would have tried to talk him out of it, but the way things are going, he just doesn't, he's put himself in a position where he doesn't have the clout. He doesn't have the leverage because of the contract. And the way he's handled this summer, it just hasn't been ideal, and it's not getting him what he wants, Spears.
And you tweeted out something, or maybe you said, I think you said this on NBA Today recently, is that it's hurting his trade value too, right?
Yeah.
I want to see if you could expound on that a little bit.
So as I was
that
talking,
was an interesting nugget.
Yeah. So I was talking to some after this came out, I just kind of wanted to know how, how people were reading it, because I was kind of scratching my head. Now, um, there's some information that I don't have, of course. I wasn't at the meeting. I don't know when he asked for Nash and Marks to be fired. It was my understanding, and I'm certainly not saying that I know it all here. I have pieces of the puzzle. It was my understanding that when Kevin asked to be traded, the Nets were a little bit confused as to what his reasoning was. They had some theories, and they may have known that he had some animus towards the job that Nash and Marks were doing. But maybe I just didn't have the information. Maybe I'm just behind on this. But when I talked to people and did reporting after the trade demand, I never heard that he had asked for those firings. But again, I've subsequently heard that didn't stun the Nets. So I don't know where the truth is. But that was that request, whether it happened in June or whether it happened in August, under these circumstances, it was confusing to me, because the season ended 3 months ago for him. So I was trying to get my arms around.
But it all came out after the Kyrie Lakers stuff came out, right? So I have to believe there's a connection there.
Well, I have to wonder about Kevin hanging out the last 10 days in Europe with Harden. They're going to Travis Scott concerts. They're in Barcelona. They're in Saint Tropez. I mean, they're looking like they're having an awesome time. They've been friends for a decade. And Harden wanted out of there. And so now I'm wondering, I mean, not like I'm saying that, just because he's not hanging with Kyrie, that's a thing, but it's like, he clearly is still boys with Harden.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm trying to get my arms around it. So I'm talking to teams out there,
Good
including
luck.
some, right. So including some teams that have been in negotiations with the Nets about Durant. I'm like, what do you make of this? And they're like, this is not making anybody want to improve their offer.
Yeah.
Because really what's happened is that the Nets have basically said none of these offers are any good. And these other teams are like, well, that's our offer for right now. And so we're in a stalemate. And the Nets want something to happen that increases the offer. And so this move is not going to increase the offers. And in fact, the Nets sort of hardening their position with what Joe Tsai said in that tweet made it clear they weren't gonna take a discount.
Yeah.
Their position on demanding a massive premium is not changing. So I don't think there's really been a move. I don't want to say Kevin's farther away from getting traded, but he's not closer.
No.
So whatever he was trying to accomplish in that meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't even know. And I wish I had all the information. I just have to be honest, Mark. I don't have it all. I would like to know, and I'm going to try to find out. I don't know if I'll be successful. I'd like to know who asked for the meeting.
And I'm curious as to what good comes from leaking that out on both sides.
Well, you have to wonder if it was a leak, because
or
sometimes there's
somebody on either side wanted it out. This is one of those cases where it makes both sides look, it's not good for either.
I agree.
I don't know what benefit comes from either side having that out.
I agree, but it was interesting that Joe Tsai found no problem in coming out and making a statement about it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I just don't know, Travis Scott had a concert scheduled in London for a while. In fact, I think I was in London. I saw ads for it. He was having, I believe, 2 or 3 days of concerts in a row at the O2 Arena.
Yeah.
That was on the books for a long time. I don't know when Kevin and Harden decided to go, but I'll bet it wasn't the day before. So Durant was in in London. So his schedule dictated he was in London. Did Cy come over there to meet with him? Like, that's a kind of a big ask. Or I mean, again, for all I know, Josiah's got business in London, or he's got business in Paris, and he was on his way. And, you know, when you've got your own jet, it doesn't matter. But still, you know, it's one thing to ask, hey, I'm in New York, can you come to LA? I mean, that's a kind of a big ask. That happens.
Yeah.
But to fly over to London, like, that's, you know, somebody, maybe their schedule's just aligned, but somebody made some effort there.
Yeah.
So that, you know,
well,
that is
I mean, Josiah's effort is a very nice plane. It ain't like me and you, like the trek you just took to London, which you know, going. Were you even direct?
No.
Trust me,
but
he flew in a much nicer capacity than you did.
I am well aware. Also, we were 5 hours late getting in, and I missed the soccer match I was going to go to.
He went to a private airport, I'm sure, Brian.
I'm sure he did. Yes, I'm sure he didn't have as much issue checking his bags.
He probably slept in his bedroom on the plane.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure his plane is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, still, like, regardless of the comfort of the trip, it's time.
Yeah.
For a billionaire, that.
Well, I mean, but valuable. Kevin's worth that. Like, I mean, they had to meet at some point, and
I agree.
I think maybe perhaps he was hoping that he could figure it all out.
But see, again, I don't have the information, but like, here's the thing. My feel on this is that the Nets are trying to sell Durant on coming back.
Yeah.
And give it another try. So, like, my feel, again, I'm going to underline it if I can, because I don't want to be pigeonholed into a report. My feel is that Cy was like, okay, I'll come to London because I want to have a spirit where let's try to make this work out. And then Durant was like, nope, I still want to be traded. And by the way, I still want Nash fired and Sean, you know. And so, like, if I had the details of how that came down, it would make me have a better feel of just where they are. Because the other thing that's wild about this, Spears. So last year on the first day of training camp, I was in Brooklyn, and that's the day we found out that Kyrie couldn't participate because he was unvaccinated, and it set the tone for the entire Nets season. And at the same time, you know, a couple, 100 whatever miles away down in Philly, Ben Simmons was not reporting. And now media day is coming in about 6 weeks. I don't know what could happen. 100 different things could happen. But now you're going to have Ben Simmons, from what I understand, smiling and having high hopes for this season. And Kyrie and appears to be on better terms with the Nets than he was 2 months ago. Cy is tweeting nice things about him. The Nets are putting Kyrie videos on their social media, and everybody seems nice and happy. And there was actually, there was a couple of remarkable stories that were in the media this week. And one of the stories was a story came out in the New York Post, I believe, that indicated that that Kyrie also didn't like Steve Nash, or I believe the story was he hates Nash and Marks. That was reported. And his stepmother, who's also his agent, I don't really know how you pronounce her first name, Spears, Shatalia Riley. She gave an on the record quote. Miss Riley. Well, Mrs. Riley Irving, or she's a stepmom, so I don't know.
Yeah. Her
name is Shatalia Riley Irving. So Mrs. Riley Irving.
Yeah.
She went on the record, which she has not done regularly, as far as I know. And she said, Kyrie does not hate Steve or Sean. That's not part of his being, nor how he represents of himself in the world. He's about peace, love, and acceptance. End of quote. that's just an absolutely amazing little moment in this journey we're on. He doesn't hate anybody. He's about peace, love, and acceptance.
Yeah.
Like that is
Hating
just
somebody and not working with them are two different things.
right.
Not wanting to
So
work with them.
also, I want to just, and I'm not saying that this, what I'm about to read you is relevant to what's going on, but I think that it should be on the record because it is on the
Yeah.
record. Kevin Durant's agent, Rich Kleiman. Durant and Rich Kleiman were producers of a documentary that just came out on the great New York City point guards. I believe it was called Point God.
Excellent
Point Gods.
documentary. Got it.
Okay,
Must see documentary. Make
I
sure you
have
see
not
it.
seen it. I have not seen it. So Kevin was not available for many interviews around this because he sent a trade demand.
Yeah.
So Rich did some interviews, and there was a story in Billboard magazine all about Rich Kleiman, and the whole story is about his whole career and how he got to know Mark Ronson and Jay-Z when he was coming up in the business. And it's actually a good background piece. It's not really much about Kevin at all. However, this quote is in there, and I just think it should be noted. I definitely want to be part of an NBA organization at one point in my life, whether that's in ownership or being the president of team or doing it with KD after he retires. What Leon Rose and Bob Myers have done, those are incredible jobs. Would I want to run a prestigious organization? Why not? This story comes out with Rich Kleiman on the record. Now, look, he could have given that interview 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He could have given that interview 12 weeks ago. But I think it's interesting that in the same time that Kevin Durant is asking for the general manager to be fired, that we have a story with his agent saying he wants to be a general manager, like Bob Myers and Leon Rose.
Yeah.
These are two quotes that, I just have watched in the last week. Okay. Like I'm going to hold on to that, to Mrs. Riley Irving's quote about how Kyrie only believes in love and acceptance. And I'm going to refer to it because I think that's one of those things where you're like, oh, really?
You know what's sad about this, Brian? I'm gonna just jump in here, man. These two guys on the basketball court are just like beautiful, poetic, elite, box office. Kevin Durant's the best scorer in the world. Kyrie with a basketball is like Curly Neal of 2022. It's just,
yeah,
it's just so. I can't name two. I mean, I can't name 5 players I love watching more play than them guys, right?
Yeah.
There might be 4, but I can't name 5. And it's just, I just wish it was just about basketball, man, because we are missing what should be some of the greatest basketball this league has ever seen from them. And I've gotten to know Kevin really well. I think I know Kyrie pretty well. I like them both as people. And I
like Kevin.
Yeah.
I like Kevin a lot. I like Kevin a lot.
I do too. And I hate that this has become them. Like this is the day to day. And this is the bed they made, right?
Yeah.
And Kevin Durant is he living in the Bay Area. Those couple years I got to be close and watch him play. I mean, I'm blessed to see Steph Curry a lot, but to watch him play is just the greatest offensive player I've ever seen. Like unstoppable. And I just hate that this
so easy.
And I hate that this is part of his resume for him, man. And this is part of Kyrie's resume. Like, because they're two great basketball players. Like we haven't talked nothing about KD's jump shot or his ability to be unstoppable, or Kyrie's dribbling skills. And it's all like the reality shows my wife watches, man. That's what this feels like. Like I just waiting for somebody to throw a drink on somebody,
Spears, you're so right, because like what we should be talking about is there's been some concept that Ben Simmons could play center for this team this year.
Yeah.
And when you think about those lineups, where you'd have Simmons at center, and he could be protected by Durant and Kyrie and Seth Curry and Joe Harris, that would be one of the most potent shooting lineups that you could ever see. And you could have Simmons defend the center position and then potentially be the creator or work and pick and roll with any of those guys, spreading the floor. I mean, that's terrorizing stuff. You think about like what happens, like, when they have Royce O'Neal in there to add to defense, where they can improve defensively. What if TJ Warren, I mean, I know he's got like this chronic foot problem, and but what if TJ Warren comes back and is the guy who was in the bubble?
No question.
Who's one of the best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot about this team. And I mean, I would assume that this is one of the things that Joe Tsai would want to talk to Kevin about. Like, look at this team. Bobby Marks on NBA Today this week said this is the best Nets team Durant's been on, and I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said it a couple
I said
times.
on NBA Today a couple of days ago, I'm like, they asked us to do this win projection. I'm like, there's no team in North American sports that is harder to project than them right now, because they could be out of the playoffs and they could be number one.
Well, the NBA schedule hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
Probably
for a reason. Like, you gotta
exactly. I mean, there's
keep
never
pushing it back.
Right. There's never like a definitive date when it comes out, but and we've been in COVID, so we've been off. But typically, it is usually out in early to mid-August.
Yeah. Do you include Brooklyn right now?
I mean, like, do you put Brooklyn on a premium Christmas Day game or not?
I wouldn't.
Yeah,
but to your point, like that team, I believe Ben's going to be ready to play, right? I know people want to hate on his shooting, but he's an all-star and he's an incredible player to me. Like, if they just gave this a chance, and it's just too much. Like, I think they could have a really special team, and it's just sad that we are talking about what we're talking about right now. Yeah. We should be at this point in early August, like scrambling. We should be talking schedule.
Yeah.
We should talk more about